Scott Bessent was left speechless after Elizabeth Warren confronted him over Trump's insider trading.
Senator.
Right out of the gate, Senator Warren is framing this as a consistency test. If lawmakers shouldn't trade stocks because of potential conflict of interest, does that same logic apply to the president? That's the question hanging over this entire exchange. And notice how the room instantly gets tense when it moves from Congress to the White House.
Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Secretary Bessent, let's start with something you and I agree strongly on. Last year, you came out in support of a trading ban for members of Congress, and I have introduced legislation to do exactly that. You explained the need for a ban on our trading stock by saying, quote, you look at some of these eye-popping returns, every hedge fund would be jealous of them. And that, quote, if any private citizen traded that way, the SEC would be knocking on their door. Those are strong words from someone who used to run a hedge fund. Last month, President Trump's latest financial disclosures came out, and they show that he made more than 3,400 stock trades worth more than $250 million in just the first 3 months of 2026. That's roughly half of what all 535 members of Congress made last year combined. And the value of virtually every one of those stocks that the president traded in is directly affected by President Trump's official actions. So, Secretary Bessent, you and I agree that it is a conflict of interest for members of Congress to trade stocks.
This is where the hearing shifts from a policy debate to a credibility battle. Warren isn't just asking whether stock trading is legal. She's asking whether the public should trust officials who can influence the very markets they're invested in. What do you think? Is disclosure enough? Or should top government officials be completely barred from owning individual stocks?
Do you also agree that it's conflict of interest for President Trump to trade stocks?
Well, a couple of things, Senator. One, President Trump is not sitting in the Oval Office engaging in a high-frequency trading strategy. Clearly, he had an outside manager who was doing that, and I think it's incumbent upon both houses of Congress to get their house in order before you move to the administrative branch.
You think it's okay for the president to do this? Because let's be clear, you are a Wall Street guy, so you know better. The investments that President Trump has made are not blind. President Trump literally signed the 113-page document publicly listing all of his individual stock trades at the same time that he is making decisions affecting those stocks. So you're going to sit here with straight face and say it's not.
Now we're entering the most explosive territory of the hearing. Warren is drawing a direct line between a stock purchase and a later policy decision that allegedly benefited that company. Legally, proving wrongdoing requires far more than timing alone. But politically, even the appearance of a conflict can become a major story.
Not a conflict of interest for the President of the United States to do that?
I'm going to say this body needs to get its house in order first.
How about we get the White House in order at the same time?
I would encourage you to do that.
I don't trade in individual stocks. I don't own any individual stocks. My house is in order. Thank you.
Senator, you're very
Mr.
rich.
Secretary.
Others on this committee can't say that, Senator.
Let's look at some individual trades. On January 6th, Donald Trump purchased up to $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock. 1 week later, his administration changed U.S. policy and loosened the rules on export controls so that NVIDIA could sell its chips to China. Now the price of NVIDIA stock is through the roof. So, Secretary Bessent, you said last year, if any private citizen traded the way members of Congress do, quote, the SEC would be knocking on their door. So my question is, should the SEC be...
Notice how neither side is backing down. Warren keeps pushing the idea that anti-corruption rules should apply equally to everyone, while Bessent keeps redirecting attention back to Congress. It's a classic Washington standoff. Both sides arguing that the other side should clean up first.
knocking on President Trump's door to start an investigation over this trade.
Again, if this body wants to ban individual stock trading, which I would advocate for yourselves, start there. And if you want legislative action to continue, that's your prerogative.
So it's our prerogative. So you would support our saying that President Trump should be investigated over this?
I would support
our trade should be investigated and President Trump should be investigated.
I would support you getting your house in order, Senator.
And how about the White House getting its house in order?
Again,
would you support that investigation?
Please lead by example.
I would like to see the President of the United States lead by example. You say there should be an investigation when that kind of activity takes place. How about we start with the White House?
Well,
Let's do
create
one more.
Statute. The President does not.
Trump bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of stock in Robinhood and the Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, known as BNY. On April 6th, your Treasury Department announced it had chosen the financial agent to implement the new Trump accounts program, BNY and its partner, Robinhood. Both stocks, of course, have risen since then. So, Secretary Bessent, let me ask you a different question. If these stock purchases that Trump made were made using inside information, would that be illegal?
Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to speak to that. And I think,
would it be worth investigating? You don't have to be a lawyer. You're the one who said what should be investigated.
Why don't we investigate many people on this committee, Senator? Many people.
And you don't think the White House should have to follow the same set of rules that are already the law?
I think you should get your house in order here.
My house is in order. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
And you should have your fellow committee members, mostly on your side of the aisle, do the same.
We need stronger anti-corruption rules and conflict of interest rules in Washington for everyone. And that includes the president and it includes Congress. And instead of draining the swamp, what Donald Trump is doing.
And just like that, the conversation pivots from stock trades to something that affects every taxpayer, the national debt. This is a huge shift in topic, but there's a connection. Both debates ultimately come down to government accountability and how public money is managed.
Doing is he is enriching himself by taking advantage of his position. That is not public service. He's the one who should lead by example.
When I was watching, and I support opportunity zones, they've been helpful to Vermont. But number two, I want to talk about what I think is a looming crisis that gets far too little attention in this Congress, and that's the national debt. And I know you're familiar with this, and I'm just going to show the chart for others. The projection of the debt, first of all, January of 2025, it was 36.2 trillion. It's now 39.2 trillion. And as you can see in this chart, the trajectory of this debt is just going up and up and up. And the CBO right now says that debt held by the public is 99% of the gross domestic product, is scheduled to go up by 2030 to 20%. And we're now paying interest, as you know, probably better than anybody, of $970 billion. So taxpayer revenues are going $970 billion to debt that exceeds our military budget. And obviously means that we can't spend it on other things that folks in Mr. Crapo's district and folks in my district need. The federal interest payments rose to 18.5% of all of our revenues. And the CBO says that's going to go up to 25.8% by 2036.
And just like that, the conversation pivots from stock trades to something that affects every taxpayer, the national debt. This is a huge shift in topic, but there's a connection. Both debates ultimately come down to government accountability and how public money is managed.
And we don't talk about it at all. It's not even a topic, which is astonishing to me because it's such a threat. Now, there's three ways to address debt. One is we can cut spending. One is we can raise revenues. And I don't want to talk about those two today, but there's one other where there, I think, should be consensus, and that is we can collect the revenues that taxpayers owe. And that's why I want to talk to you a little bit about the staffing cuts that I understand have taken place at the IRS, which has reduced their capacity to collect revenues that are owed by taxpayers. In fiscal year 2027, the IRS enforcement funding was cut by 18%, 28%, or pardon me, 2,800 staff positions were reduced. And that's in addition to 26% of revenue agents lost in 2025. And I've got a revenue chart here this was prepared by the Peterson Foundation, and I find them to be extremely credible on debt issues. I don't know if you share my high opinion of
Not anymore.
Well,
I think they've lost their way.
Well, all right. We will disagree on that.
Okay.
I find them to be an extremely credible source. But what this chart shows is that as we increase the cutting of revenue agents, the loss of owed revenue. This is owed revenue. We're not talking about increasing anybody's taxes.
You're talking about the tax gap.
That's right. The tax gap is going to be $1.8 trillion. So the obvious question here is, why are we cutting the people who we need in?
Here's the core disagreement. One side argues that cutting IRS enforcement staff makes it harder to collect taxes already owed. The other argues that simply adding more employees doesn't automatically improve results. It's a debate over efficiency versus capacity, and it's one that could affect trillions of dollars in future revenue.
The IRS to do the audits to collect revenues that are due to the Treasury.
Well, Senator, a couple of things. Let's backtrack to your previous chart. The Peterson Institute of CBO project that we were going to grow at 1.8%. Thus far, in this administration, we've grown at 2 points.
Let me interrupt a minute.
It's 1.8 forever. We've grown at 2.6%.
No, let me just stay on the revenue, because whether we grow at 1.8, as they say, or 2.8, whatever it is you say, you would agree with me that if I'm a taxpayer and I owe money, I should pay it.
And I can tell you that more bodies does not equal better collections.
So you just disagree that...
Here, let me read you something. So I think that they would agree, TIGTA, which is the IRS, the internal reporting system, all of these employees who were hired, that a whistleblower in Atlanta came out and said a 25-year IRS CI employee who trained 2,700 new IRS agents.
I'm going to have to interrupt because my time is running out.
I'll be happy to send this to you.
Please
show you why it's a complete fallacy. Last year we had recoveries up, collections up.
Can I just get a little extra time? Because I thank you, Mr. Secretary.
30 seconds.
Number one, I absolutely believe that the people who owe money should be paying that money, and that we should have assertive enforcement in order to get that collected, regardless of what the growth rate is. That's number one. Number two, one of the things that is happening is we've withdrawn from the global effort for coordinated organization for economic cooperation, and companies are now using these low-tax Dodge countries. Like American Express avoided $423 million in taxes by using the island of Jersey, saying that's where they do their work. Black & Decker cut their bill by $27 million by using Cyprus. Many companies use Malta. S&P Global cut its tax bill by $269 million. Is that something that we should tolerate?
And that's where we'll leave this debate. What started as a heated argument over stock trading and conflicts of interest expanded into a much larger conversation about government ethics, tax enforcement, and the nation's growing debt. Both sides presented sharply different views, but the bigger question remains, should the same standards of accountability apply to everyone in government, regardless of position or party? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the biggest political and legal showdowns happening today.